I have to let you in on a little secret. I'm not a Brazilian. I'm told my Portuguese is absolutely atrocious. But I've spent the last 20 years as an analyst and an investor looking at the global resources sector. And no good analysis of the global resources sector is complete without understanding Brazil. And without understanding Brazilian resources, isn't complete without understanding Brazilian infrastructure and what there is and the progress made thus far. Before I go into the presentation, I think it's really important you understand my perspective that for the past 10 years of focusing almost full-time on Brazil, the one thing that has struck me by visiting companies across the country is labor. It's hard to find skilled people. I love the projects on the board. I love the return potential that will come out of these infrastructure projects. I'm terrified at how you're going to find the people that are required to do the job you're going to demand of them. There are only so many people right now who are qualified. So let me then help you understand why I'm here today, because I'm not here as an investor or an analyst. I'm here because I'm on the board of directors of World Fund, which is a not-for-profit group that actually was founded by someone just like me, an analyst who was focusing on Latin America, predominantly Brazil. And what we decided to do was try to tackle the project of education, because Brazil needs it. I was struck also, Mr. Ambassador, the article that was in the Financial Times yesterday. And for those of you who haven't read it, I'd like to give you a couple quotes from the article that featured President Rousseff. She said, firstly, "This, I think, is a very important gain for Brazil, that is, to transition Brazil into a middle-class population." Later on in the article, she was quoted as saying, "We want a country that produces, that creates knowledge and applies it here. We want a skilled workforce." I would ask her to strengthen that and say we need a skilled workforce. I know for a fact that everyone in this room wants exactly this for Brazil. And I know for a fact that every project that has been mentioned this morning and every shipyard and the success of local content would be meaningfully improved in terms of efficiency gains and return on investment if this were to happen. The challenges are very significant. We have high labor costs, low productivity, poor infrastructure, working on that one, and taxation issues. But the challenges aren't insurmountable. And systemic improvements to education can and will result in gains in each. To that end, I'd like to show you some data. So if you wouldn't mind pulling your attention to the slides. If we look strictly, we're going to attack this the way an analyst would attack this. Years of schooling for adults. If we look at 1960, 2000, and 2010, we've seen meaningful improvement in terms of how long people stay in school. If you look at Brazil, Brazil has made phenomenal improvements. I want to call your attention to Korea, because I will call back to Korea with these slides. If we delve further, let's look at where they went to school, how far they went. In 1960, you can see now each of these bars, the green, the silver, the blue, for each country adds up to 100%. So the goal here is to have a higher blue than the silver, than the green. If we look through the years, right, Brazil really came alive in the years 2000 to 2010. Now, in my mind, it's no surprise that those are the years. Corresponds with the resources cycle, corresponds with the rise of China. We've made great progress in Brazil. I think we can go farther. The other thing I'd like to point out is the imbalance on this slide between primary school, secondary school, and tertiary. This will play in just a moment. This is spending. Now, spending doesn't equal quality, but spending is important. And where, any budget is an expression of a nation's priorities. If we look at spending, now it is obvious you go to university, you spend more, right? And universities are very expensive, but the allocation of resources is really different in Brazil versus the other countries. In fact, in Brazil, public universities have 2% of the country's pupils, yet receive 25% of all federal education funds. It's awesome once you get there. The issue is getting there. So let's look at how Brazil ranks relative to the rest of the world. Now, I think this slide, and I was given these slides from World Fund, I think this slide is totally skewed against Brazil because Brazil's made such great strides in terms of GDP per capita over the last 10 years. But if you look, Brazil's in that lower quadrant, kind of over the 10,000, and the way this slide works is GDP per capita is on the horizontal axis, and the vertical axis is a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being poor quality, 7 being high quality. And this was data that was presented by the World Economic Forum. Brazil ranks in there in terms of dollars, kind of close to South Africa, Thailand, a little ahead of China, but in terms of quality, not as great. In fact, in a 2009 study, 50% of Brazilian 15-year-olds scored at the lowest level. Now, that means they're functionally illiterate in today's society. I don't know if Ted Helms is going to entrust an illiterate person to run the shipyards. I mean, I think we have to close this gap. When you look overall at Brazil's high school students, 70% are not competent in math. Over half can't give any scientific explanation for familiar phenomena, and the issue is just as great in science. Now, infrastructure is really heavy in math and science and provides phenomenal opportunities. But we're not training problem solvers in math and science. Now, I know probably everyone who is educated here went to one of the fabulous universities and high schools, and this study, the PISA study, included those great high schools. 0.4% of students in Brazil performed at the highest level in science. And only a fraction of the students scored at the highest level in reading and math as well. And this is the last really depressing slide, and then we'll get on to the good stuff. This is test scores and GDP growth, and this is another slide that I think really is slanted against Brazil because it only carries up to 2000. But if you look at this regression analysis and you look at the test scores that were available in 1960, and then you go forward 40 years and you try to identify the pace of economic development. And again, we're going to go back to Korea, because Korea in 1960 had a similar approach to education as other countries, right? But then really embarked upon improving its secondary education and then the tertiary education. And if you look, Korea had a phenomenal rise. The horizontal axis here is the test score, so were you above average or below average? And then the vertical axis is just the growth, the economic growth over that period of time. Was it above average or below average? The USA is right in the middle. We spend a lot of money, but we kind of tread water. Korea, bear in mind, did go through a phenomenal economic burst in the 1980s, and that will have skewed the numbers. But you got to educate your kids and get them working and improve your skilled workforce to begin to grow your economic profile. So how do you do it, right? This is the big question. Well, we've looked at it at World Fund, and the reason that I'm very involved in World Fund is we tried to look at it systematically and analytically. And while it's great as a parent to advocate for your child, the student, it's the teacher who makes the difference. In a study that was done in 1996 and has since been updated, so the numbers have held true, and the conclusions are the same. If you take two students with equal ability, and one student gets an above average teacher, and another student gets an average or below average teacher, 2 years later, the kid who had the better teacher at 8 years old is 1 to 1.5 grade levels higher than the one who had the average or below average teacher. It's the teacher. Teachers' impact on the student lives. Okay, so that's ages 8 to 11. Great, but let's talk about their cumulative earnings power, and let's talk about their college. Let's talk about their ability to get higher into school. Teacher value added is a term you'll see in a lot of the academic journals. And when you look at this, and this study was done in 2011. So if you replace your teacher whose value added is at the bottom 5% with an average teacher, just an average teacher, you'd increase that student's lifetime income in the US by more than $250,000 for the average classroom that was done in this sample set. Teachers really do matter. They matter in terms of their inspiring a child to learn, inspiring somebody to move on to go to college, and college-educated people typically end up out-earning their non-college educated people. So World Fund, I'm not here to ask you money for World Fund, although I would love to, but that's not why I'm here. There are many projects out there that are looking at this. And the nice thing about being in the not-for-profit sector is we don't compete, right? Everyone can join in. So it's not a zero-sum game. What World Fund specifically does, and launched in Brazil, is a science, technology, engineering, and math program targeted at teachers. We are training teachers. We're basing our training on project-based learning to try to bring science and math into the classroom, bring a new set of standards up. Our training specifically is in biology, chemistry, math, and physics, and in 21st century skills. So information management, problem solving. What do you do when a ship bumps into a ship loader and your port is out? You know, how do you solve that problem? We believe that the foundational skills can be learned in primary school and secondary school. So our goal is to get to the teachers and to improve their reach. What we've done so far, and again, we started in 2009, we're working with a program in Recife, and we're rolling out into Sao Paulo. We've trained so far 170 teachers. That equals 36,000 students. These are in the public schools. We're also, this year, we've started with 160 teachers in Sao Paulo. So it's improved our reach to 100,000 students. We're offering a 3-year commitment to the teachers. So it's not just one training session and out you go. This is 3 years of comeback, online learning, and feedback. And with the goal, the simple goal, is that we recognize that we're going to see an increasing need of a college degree to be prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. That's it. Thank you.